To get the character to hold on to the spear, we're actually going to need to constrain the character's hands to the spear. So to do this, we'll position the hands as best we can. What might be useful first is to bake down our animation layers into a single layer. So I'll collapse the animation layers down into a single layer. So I am back to working with keyframes. And from here I'll actually set up some constraints. So I'll actually take the hand constraint. Actually, I can just do a matchup here. I'll get a null. Normally I would do an offset pose constraint, but in this case I'm actually going to match them up. I'll match position to my end effector and to my wrist bone, which is inside of the hand. Just match that up again. And actually I should probably just spend a little bit more time fitting this to the character. So I should actually pull this in like so, and pull this hand in like that, and maybe get a position like this. So I can actually overwrite the first frame, and I'll rematch up the null. So I'll grab the null again, and I'll just do a quick match position here, and make sure that the rotation is still matched up. Alright, I'll press enter and just change the icon on this to a set of rings, or again I like to use those little pyramids, and we'll call this left hand. I'll duplicate this, Control-Alt-D, and then I'll match the position to the effector of the other hand and match the rotation to the palm bone. Now both of these nulls, this is actually right hand, are going to be children of the staff, or of the spear. And now I can set up the pose constraint. So I'll take the effector, I'll do a position constraint from the hand to the wrist control, the effector, and then I'll do another constraint from the palm to the same wrist control. Repeat for the other side. We'll take the effector there, position constrain it to the control, and follow suit with an orientation constraint from the palm to the same control. I can go in now and actually curl the fingers around the staff, and one of the nice things is there isn't actually any rotational keyframes from the motion capture I need to deal with. So the hands actually almost curl around perfectly here, and I can set a keyframe on frame 1 for them. I'll be setting a keyframe on the 20th frame as well. Do a bit of tweaking here on my little forefinger twister, and then I'll grab the rest of the digits minus the spear and rotate there as well. Actually lower the hand a little more and perhaps place it a little better. Just get a better contact here. And also on the middle finger as well. Okay, so when the character starts running, the spear is going to get left behind pretty quickly because it's not actually parented to the body. So again, that's very easy to take care of as well. I'll just make a little rig control for the spear. I don't want to actually have to animate the spear on the object. So I'll get myself one of those little polygon cubes. I'll extract the edges from it, freeze the result, and delete the underlying cube. I'll match position to my spear object, and because I'm dealing with a curve object now, I can of course scale this to the length of my spear. So I'll call this the spear control. I'll I'll make the spear a child of my spear control. And I'll just have the spear itself attach at the waist of my character. So I'll do a parent, pick parent. Alright, so now I've actually got my character holding the spear here. And now I should be able to use this for my animation. Now the other thing that you have to do when you're working with mocap and you want to actually use it in something like ice is you have to take away the forward momentum of the character. And the character is actually moving in a positive axis. We need to actually figure out how many units that character has moved. And there's a really quick and dirty way you can figure this out roughly. Sometimes I'll just get myself a null. I'll place it at the tip of the character's toe. Just move it forward and say Z. Place it right at the tip of the character's toe where the geometry sits. I'll just change that into a box. I'll duplicate the box, change the duplicate into a set of rings, and make the rings a child of the box. Over those 20 frames, I now have a starting position. So frame 20 is my last position, and I take my second null and I move it forward to the tip of the toe. I'll figure out how far my character has moved in those 20 frames. And in this case, we can see that the character has moved about 47 units. So to get rid of any extra forward momentum, I'm going to do the opposite by moving the move all control backwards. So essentially we have a character working with an on-the-spot action. So that's very easy to do. We know we've moved forward 47 units, so we have to animate the character back over 20 frames, a total of 47 units. So I'll set a key on the first frame, and by the time I get to frame 20, if I slide my control back negative 47 units, something to that extent, I can actually try and make this work right for the toes. Now you can see the problem we have here is that we have a spline function curve describing the motion between our two keyframes. So I'll open up the curve editor and make the motion spline based from key to key. Okay, so now we've actually got the character moving on the spot. And so everything's working pretty good. We may want to actually make a note to ourselves when working with this character. If I just make a note underneath the advanced rig, I'll get an annotation, and I'll type in the displacement or the distance for 2 strides equals 46, I believe it was, 47. Actually, just take a look at our function curve and it'll tell us right here. So our final value is 45. Let's just call it 45.2. Right, so that'll be very useful when I actually go to apply the animation to my character. So before we finish, I'm going to just add a couple of items to groups here. So my geo group, add to group, so we can select parts of the character without actually selecting the geo. And now I'm going to turn this into an action and export this action. So I'll select everything and I'll store the animated parameters as function curves. So we'll call this stored F curve action. I'll call this the Mulcore with spear, and it's just good to know that this is a 20 frame, and I'll make a note, 45.2 offset. Alright, so we've got that action now. If I press OK, you can see that the original animation has been removed. If I have a look in the mixer, sources animation, there's the spear action, and I'm going to offload it by saving a preset, and I'll call this Alcor with spear. 20 frame and 45.2 offset. Alright, that looks pretty good. The model that I'm actually working with in ICE right now does not have this rig set up for it. So I'm going to replace the model back in ICE. So that should be easy enough to do. I will branch select the model and I'll export it and just add the name spear to the end. So now we get to go back into ICE and apply this animation to our particle system.